All right, so I'm here with Trent Staley. He's the president of Cast Iron Media. And Trent, could you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I grew up in Portland, Oregon. I swam for about 20 years. That
Mhm.
took me to college in Los Angeles, went to the University of Southern California, was an All-American team captain there. Um, and because of all that, got the opportunity to go to the World University Games in Daegu, South Korea in 2003. After college, I was on the board of directors of USA Swimming and realized that I wanted to find a career in sports. And so that led me to NASCAR, where I worked for almost a decade and then on to Cast Iron Media.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So could you so you talked about how you went to Daegu in 2003 and you participated in the 200-meter backstroke and 4 by 100 medley, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you remember most about that experience?
So, different from other swim meets that I went to and international meets that I went to,
Mhm.
the fact that it was athletes from all different sports was a new experience. And getting to be a part of a US delegation that included basketball players and everything else, that was new for me. I didn't compete on an Olympic team, so this was the closest to that sort of experience that I got to have. So it was a whole lot of fun to be able to go represent the United States of America alongside athletes from different sports. So that's one thing that I think stands out in particular from that event versus any others. The other thing that was really cool is on that team, you're all collegiate aged. You're all in that same sort of band versus other international meets, other competitions where you have teenagers, you've got people who are into their 30s and all of that. And so just the fact that we all sort of came from the same place and had a shared experience made, I think, that team a bit more cohesive. So those are two things that immediately pop out.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna, and then speaking on like continuing that, I was gonna ask you like what it's like to represent your country as well as your university, because the World University Games kind of provides a unique experience in that way.
So I grew up wanting to represent my country like that.
Hmm.
Every swim practice was building towards getting the opportunity to do that. And as a swimmer, receiving that first swim cap that has the American flag on it and your name, like I still feel like the goosebumps off of that. Like that is something that it's hard to experience in just about any other place. Like the pride that you have from so much work that's gone into it to get to sort of a moment where you're given the opportunity to represent the country. Like that was a very special moment. And it's funny that cap arrives in a box and I was alone in my dorm room and no one was with me. And so it wasn't even a moment that I got to share with anyone. It was really just me there, like getting choked up about this moment. So that's sort of the nation side. USC is so core to me. I have a typical swimmer tattoo. I have the interlocking SC on my hip above my suit line. So I'm very much a Trojan. And so, again, the opportunity to get to meld those two things together was awesome. At that point in time, Auburn and USC were both very good at football. And Auburn had a great swim team. So what I was saying is that Auburn and SC were both top of the heap in football at that point in time. And while we were in Daegu, SC and Auburn played against each other to start the season.
Hmm.
And the couple of Trojans and the few Tigers on the team, we had a bet about who was going to carry the other's luggage back to the United States. And thankfully, SC won, so we did not carry the luggage on our way back.
That's a great story.
Yeah. But like that's only gonna, I mean, it can happen in other
Yeah,
teams, but there's something about the pride that you have around your individual university alongside of being teammates with others representing the country that is unique and special about being on the World University Games team.
yeah, for sure. So moving on to like kind of during the games there. How would you describe like the facilities and the conditions of Daegu?
It was, a different sort of experience. I typically stayed in hotels when I traveled internationally for swim meets, but in the case of those games, they built apartments that were going to be leased after the games were over. So it was a fresh new build and all that. I think that the beds were a little bit small, but that was not too surprising. Swimmers are typically on the taller, bigger side. And so that was I guess different from what I'd experienced before. The pool was great. The fans were really, really great, and we had a fun time sort of establishing ourselves amongst all the other teams. I don't know why or how, but there were some fans that happened to like a few of us in particular. So I was delivered candy after a few sessions by some fans that were dead set on talking to me, which I did not expect going into it, but was a cool little feature.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So if you could change anything about that experience or like what they presented to you guys in that, would there be anything you would change and why?
What I would change is I would have had the meet be on home soil so that I could have had hometown fans
Yeah.
there for it.
Yeah,
No, it was a really great experience, and I've been back to Korea since. And I'm not the sort of person who typically wants to go visit the same place over again, but I think that trip illuminated enough of South Korea to really whet my appetite and motivate me to come back when I had more time to experience it without the limitations of representing the country and
Yeah.
having a curfew and all that stuff.
Right. So you would say that like it's a good experience and like going to would you have gone to South Korea, you think, if you hadn't have uh been selected to go to the World University Games?
I don't think that it would have been high on my list. There are so many
Yeah.
amazing places to travel and experience. I don't know that it would have been high on my list. So I was excited that that's where it was that swimming was going to take me, because then it didn't require my picking it. It just ended up being the next meet. But having traveled there, that's certainly what motivated me to want to go back to see more. Was the chance to see it as a swimmer motivated me to want to see it as a tourist.
Yeah. So I understand that you're based in Charlotte, but you probably understand like the major universities that are in the Triangle area, like Duke, Chapel Hill, or NC State. Do you believe the Triangle would be well equipped to host an event like that's large?
For sure. So I lived in Los Angeles for a long time, and LA gets talked about for the '84 Olympics and the way that it was sort of revolutionary because it already had a bunch of the facilities in place. And so it was equipped to hold the Olympics sort of in a turnkey fashion. And when I think about the Triangle, I think about that same sort of thing where it's not a destination that requires a whole bunch of things to be built new and potentially then not used again. It already has the infrastructure in place. The culture is amazing. I think the people would embrace having the World University Games there. They're proud of the universities that are in the area. And so being able to put them on show in front of a world audience, I think, is exactly appropriate for the Triangle.
Yeah. So continuing on like your resume and stuff, you've worked in with the USA like chair committee and all that. So do you believe that it would work for the state level and the national level as well, bringing an event such as the World University Games to the United States?
Yeah, I think that it's a good time for us to have an event like this and be able to display the best of what the country has to offer. And so I do think that the appropriate parties would rally behind it. Having spent time within a national governing body, USA Swimming, I know that USA Swimming would be excited to be able to have their swimmers compete in front of a hometown crowd. And I think that it'd be a really special opportunity. I'm thinking that the summer WUGs haven't been in the States since maybe the 90s or something like that. It's been a long time. So it's like, it's due, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's been one time. It's the Summer
Yeah.
World University Games have been in the United States. Yeah. So, with your, you talked about your background in sports and working in the industry. How do you believe that representing your country and participating in events kind of shaped your career path?
Um, so I frequently will note that swimming shapes me more than anything other than my parents, and the lessons that you learn in training, but also the experiences that you have traveling internationally, and learning about different people and cultures and all of that. I think absolutely broadened my horizons from what they were as a waterlogged kid growing up in Portland, Oregon. And so I'm very grateful for all of that. I certainly think that the confidence that I gained from swimming has helped me in my career. And standing up at a meet like World University Games and competing with the best athletes in the world is the sort of foundation that I think does help to launch you into a professional career.
Yeah, yeah. So, speaking of your career, you're in communications. Um, in your current position with Cast Iron Media, you're president. So you have an extensive background in like the media realm. What kind of broadcasting and media opportunities do you believe that the World University Games could pose for the North Carolina and the United States?
So our focus is really on streaming sports. And
Hmm.
I think that between now and 2027, there's only going to be a greater shift towards viewing sports over the internet versus broadcast and all of that. And I think that with the sort of interest in technology that the Triangle has, it will line up really nicely for the World University Games to be able to be showcased on a sort of platform that they haven't experienced previously. And so I think that it's a really, again, great time for that part of the world, that part of the country, to get to host something because of just the shifts that we're seeing within the media world.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely use streaming a lot more than broadcasting. But so we talked about your board of directors for swimming from 2004 to 2010, and you chaired the athletes committee from 2006 to 2008. So what was it like to be able to experience the international competitions from like an athlete's perspective, and then from the delegate side?
I like it a lot better when I'm competing. I can tell you that much. I like that competition. But I've spent now, let's see, 15 years outside of the pool, being involved in the sport at various levels and various degrees. And I'm really happy to be able to help other swimmers, other athletes, to have experiences like the ones that I had, and seeing them get to achieve goals and push themselves like is a really special thing. So going to meets, while it's hard to not be the one in the pool itself, is always special because you know what it is that those swimmers put in to get to the point where they get to stand up and do their best.
Yeah, definitely. And then I guess my last question would be, should the World University Games come to the Triangle area, what advice would you give to the North Carolina Bid Committee to help provide a premier event?
Think of the athletes first. I think that sometimes, other parties end up grabbing a lot of the airtime, but if it's a athlete first bid and it's an athlete first games, it'll be a success.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, you want to see my